So we're going to start off with Atlantis at SeaWorld San Antonio. I barely call this a roller coaster. It really doesn't do much other than go down and splash. And when you compare it to the other Atlantis rides at the other SeaWorld parks, it's definitely at the bottom of the list for the most thrilling and just not that cool all around. Next, we're finding ourselves with another Texas coaster, Wonder Woman at Fiesta Texas. This just honestly isn't the best of the Raptors. It's massively rough and just really isn't a very fun ride. So next up, we find ourselves with a pair of Wild Mouses, the two new Wild Mouses that I got to ride this year. The first one was at Valley Fair, and the second was at Michigan's Adventure. While it's just a Wild Mouse, I do really think that the Aero Wild Mice are the best ones out of all of them. If you've ridden an Aero Mouse, then you definitely know what I'm talking about when it comes down to this. They're just super fun, they're a lot smoother, and they're just a lot faster in mousy type of ways. I mean, there's so many different manufacturers of Wild Mice, but I really feel like the Aero Mice definitely are the best at the top of that list for sure. I'm sure if you've ridden one, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I really did like the one at Michigan's Adventure a little bit more than the one at Valley Fair. I just thought it had a little bit more oomph to it, and it was just a little bit more fun in general. Overall, you really can't ever go wrong with a Wild Mouse. They're just a fun time. So sticking with Michigan's Adventure, we find ourselves over at Corkscrew, which is just your generic small type aero looper. Once you've ridden an aero looper, you've pretty much ridden them all. I mean, it's most of the inversions are the same, but these smaller ones definitely are fun and compact. They just really have nothing on the large scale ones like Viper at Magic Mountain. So now we find ourselves down in Florida with Velocicoaster. What I'm going to say is probably the most overhyped roller coaster I've ever ridden. I just really didn't honestly think it's that great. I think the hype for it is way too high, just like it is for anything that's Universal. Once you've ridden this, it's just kind of eh. But either way, it was still a fun ride, but it's just not my favorite. So now heading back to Texas, where I find myself at Fiesta Texas for Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger. I really do enjoy a solid B&M dive coaster, and this one was no exception to that. While I don't think it's the best B&M dive coaster out there, I really do feel like it is a great time either way. It has a fun layout, it's in a super cool part of the park, and this ride just ultimately just fits in this park, especially with where they put it. I mean, you really can't go wrong with it, so if you find yourself out at Fiesta Texas, make sure you dive on in to Dr. Diabolical's for a good time. Lots of new coaster credits for me in Texas this year, including Wavebreaker here at SeaWorld San Antonio. While I really don't feel like this is one of the best coasters in this park, it's a cool time for families, but overall, I just really kind of thought it was boring. Staying in the same SeaWorld park, we find ourselves with Great White, your typical Batman clone. Nothing more, nothing less than a Batman clone. While I do really enjoy the Batman clones, I think they're quite fun. I think they're actually quite intense for being a small, compact, inverted looping coaster. I really do think the best out of all these is definitely the one at Six Flags St. Louis. While each one of them is a good time in their own way, this was just another Batman clone to me this day. So now it's all about a Wolverine mixed with a Wildcat at Michigan's Adventure. While I did really feel this was a pretty cool wooden coaster, I really definitely didn't feel it was the best wooden coaster in this park. The setting of where this ride takes place, right here on the lake, is totally beautiful, and I really enjoyed my ride for that reason alone. While some of the track on here was insanely rough, the other half of it had been totally retracked and was actually really smooth. So it was kind of like hit or miss, like if you're gonna have a crazy ride or a really smooth ride, either way. So we're gonna stick with the Woodies. We're gonna find ourselves here at Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana with the Raven. While I did really enjoy this ride, I really did think it had kind of a cool layout that went out into the woods and back. I just really feel that once you've ridden other coasters in this park that are made out of wood, nothing compares to them. I mean, the wooden coasters here are pretty epic in their own way. The Raven was awesome in so many ways, but I really definitely feel that it is definitely not the best wooden coaster in this park. I mean, when you have other ones like the Voyage, I mean, can anything else really compare to it? But either way, it's still a good time, so make sure you get on the Raven when you head to Holiday World. There's a Thunderhawk in the sky at Michigan's Adventure, and I finally got to ride it this year, which was actually one of my last Geauga Lake credits to actually get in North America. I mean, it's just an SLC. Once you've ridden SLC, you know exactly what to expect with the hanging banging. This one I thought was kind of weird though, as there was like a weird little pocket in the restraint, which my shoulder kind of dug into. It's definitely unique. Back at Islands of Adventure, we find ourselves riding the Hulk, which I honestly feel is the best coaster in this park. I really enjoyed my ride on this. I thought the theming was cool, thought the layout was cool, and overall, I just thought this was a great B&M. And like I said, definitely the best coaster in this park by far. Aquaman Power Splash is epic in its own way, not only for the splash that it makes when you get to ride it, but for how long it took Six Flags to finally open this ride. I mean, I get why it took them so long so they can put the turntable in to increase guest capacity, but I really thought this ride was totally crazy, especially on the day that I rode it, because it was so cold outside. It was like in the 50s, and for Texas, that's pretty cold. So I got super wet and super cold, but I really enjoyed my ride on this. I only did ride it once because it was just too cold and too wet to do anymore. But either way, I'm very much so looking forward to getting back to this park again someday to give Aquaman another ride because I really enjoyed my time on it. In the middle of Iowa, you're going to find this really cool park called Adventureland with a really unique Flying Vikings coaster, which I thought was a totally good time for being a family coaster. I just enjoyed the layout. I thought it fit perfectly into this park as they really didn't have a solid family coaster that fit into this park. I mean, they have crazy rides like Monster, which is one of my all-time favorites, and then they built a really cool family ride like this, which I really thought had a lot more whoop to it and a little bit more kick than you actually would expect for just your generic family coaster. So if you find yourself in the middle of central Iowa, definitely give it a ride. I love how there's so many coasters on here from Michigan's Adventure. I mean, you can't go wrong with Zack Sumer, which is a really fun little wooden coaster. It's super compact and it was just a good time. Like, I really enjoyed my ride on here. I mean, it has the buzz bars and it was just kind of a fun, cool little experience. You can't really go wrong with a little compact wooden coaster like this that has the super small train cars and just kind of out of control and chaotic in its own zoomy type of way. A launched B&M wing coaster? Oh, you so know that means we're at Holiday World to ride Thunderbird, which I actually really kind of enjoyed. I thought it was a cool experience being launched on a wing coaster, something I've never done before with that, and you know, it's just kind of a unique ride, especially for this park. And all those wooden coasters they have, to have the only steel coaster, well, not for much longer, because Good Gravy's coming, but that's a totally different ride compared to this. I mean, you can't go wrong with a good B&M wing coaster. While it really does have nothing on Gatekeeper or X-Flight, I did think it was a good time and I really did enjoy the launch. It made it unique for sure. Screamin' Eagle at Six Flags Great America. I finally got to ride the left side of the track this time. I really enjoyed this. I really think this is a really cool wooden coaster built by Intamin. I mean, there's not very many of them out there, but this one definitely rocks. Now here's a coaster that actually lives up to a lot of the hype. The Voyage at Holiday World rocks. This thing was incredible. Just the amount of airtime I got in the back row on this ride and how it takes you out in the woods, you just hang out back there for a bit and then it takes you right back to the park. I really enjoyed my time on the Voyage. So there actually came a point where I started riding several new wooden coasters within a really short couple day period, one of them being Shivering Timbers at Michigan's Adventure. This coaster was very much so pretty awesome in its own way. I really do think that this coaster lives up to the hype and definitely belongs in this park as it is an all-star ride for this park. It is so packed full of airtime in the back row that you really just feel like you're flying out of control with each passing hill that you're going over. I mean, this coaster is insanely long as it is for a wooden coaster, and with all those crazy speed hills on it, there's never a dull moment on here. This is definitely a hidden gem all the way up in northern Michigan, so do yourself a favor and get out this park and give it a ride, because if you love wooden coasters as much as I do, then you're totally going to dig your time riding Shivering Timbers, because it really is an epic time and it's just an all-around solid woody. I mean, it goes so fast over these hills and you're just having so much airtime, you really don't know what to do with yourself other than say, this is incredible, let's go ride it again as soon as it's done, guys. Super good time at Michigan's Adventure for sure. So one of the first new wooden coasters that I rode this year was Texas Stingray at SeaWorld San Antonio. I really wasn't expecting this coaster to be as awesome as it was, because no one's really said anything about it, but this is definitely a hidden gem in the middle of Texas, guys. It was such a super fun layout. It had just awesome good time on this ride. It was so crazy and compact. I was getting Mystic Timbers vibes from it, and for me to say that, it says a lot. So one of the coolest coasters I feel that opened this year was Tron Lightcycle Run at my home park of Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World. I mean, the trains for this are completely epic. I mean, just like the colors is so rad, especially at night. This is definitely up there with one of the best night rides ever. Specifically this part right here where it's all blue and it's just super lit up. It's such a good time. While this coaster is super short, I mean super short, it's definitely a good time for what it is. I just really wish that it was just a little bit longer. So now what I'm going to say is probably my favorite new coaster that I rode this year is Air Force One at Funspot Atlanta. This ride is just so crazy and so out of control in so many ways. feels like it's gonna rip your head off. This thing's gnarly. For me to say that says a lot because I can handle some pretty intense rides. This one's definitely up there with one of the most intense RMCs that has ever been built. At least in North America, that's for sure. Especially this part right here, just going over all the humps and into that brake run where it slams into it is so crazy intense that you really just don't know what to expect from it. Well, thank you guys for watching this video. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe here on YouTube. Love you all. Have an awesome new year.